Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished professional from Sydney, Australia, Mr. Sandeep Gupta. Sandeep, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. It's a pleasure to be on this show.
Thank you. Sandeep is a life transformation coach, and we're going to talk about coaching today. But Sandeep, before we talk coaching, tell me a little bit about your own journey from being a CFO to becoming a coach. What was the inspiration for this change?
Okay. So all along, in my finance career, I've been drawn to people. I have more specifically to the potential of people.
Mm.
And I've had occasion several times to encourage my team members to move ahead, to grow, and to actually achieve, beyond what they thought was possible.
Mm.
And I have been successful several times, so that was very satisfying.
Mm.
As I went along my career, I also developed an interest in human behavior. And so I enrolled in a graduate program for psychology.
Mhm.
After doing one module, I called it quits because I realized that this is a lot more intense than I thought, and my commitments to the job, family, and other things just do not give me the bandwidth
Mm.
to do that program. So I left it a bit reluctantly, but it was the right thing for me to do.
Mm.
And then came COVID. So with COVID, what happened is um, I started meeting a few people, and by chance, I met a few coaches.
Mm.
So it was just a chance.
Yes.
And as I met the coaches, I discovered that this is exactly what I want to do. This is a very great platform in which I can use my experience and help other people out.
Mm.
So I used that time as well to certify myself in coaching, and here I am.
And the rest is history. Well said. So, Sandeep, tell me, what is your own core philosophy when it comes to coaching senior finance leaders? And I was fascinated that you're focused on a segment of leaders who are from finance.
Well, yes, I'm focused on that because I'm a finance person myself, so I kind of understand the pain that the finance leaders go
Mm.
through. Plus, I want to help my own people per se, if you get that. So, uh, yeah, sorry, what was the
No,
question?
what is your own core philosophy?
Yeah, my philosophy. My philosophy is actually three-pronged. So the first is I get the people to move out of their comfort zone.
Mm.
And this is really hard because, they're senior leaders.
Mm.
And when they come to that position, the feeling is that, look, I'm all right. My beliefs are fine. My values are fine. What I do is fine. Why else would I be in this position? So getting them to move into out of the comfort zone is a bit hard, but that's one of my core things.
Okay.
The second thing is self-awareness. So I am focused a lot in my coaching on their self-awareness. So just in case you may or may not be aware that studies have shown that there are only 10 to 15% of us who are really self-aware.
Mm.
And the more, shall I use, incompetent we are, the more we think we are self-aware.
Mm.
So that's second. And the third one is to build new habits.
Mm. Very interesting. Very interesting. And when you talk to a lot of senior finance leaders, what are some of the common challenges you help them to overcome?
See, actually, all of them have their own challenges, and they change from time to time. But what I find is that these three things that I mentioned as my philosophy, they are pretty common across the board.
Mm.
The reluctance to move away from their comfort zone,
Mm.
their lack of self-awareness.
Mm.
And even after doing all of this, there's a tendency to fall back into old
Mm.
ways
Yeah.
because developing new habits is not easy.
Yeah.
So these are, I would say, the common problems that
Okay.
the senior finance leaders face.
And in your view, given the fact that you yourself was a senior corporate finance leader, what are some of the key leadership skills that you believe are essential for senior finance
Ah,
leaders today, given all
right.
the onset of technology and the C-suite roles?
Yeah, today is really the important word there. Um, so I think in the times we live in now, the
Mm,
future is really uncertain. You've got the climate, you've got the politics, you've got AI, you've got, the people, the generation gap, there's a completely different attitude to the new generation, so many different things. So I would say that adaptability is the probably one of the most important skills that a leader
mm,
requires today.
mm,
And then after that, I would say self-awareness. And self-awareness includes emotional intelligence.
mhm,
And we're still dealing with people.
mm,
Without people, work's not getting done, and so that's equally important. Then it is. These are just my thoughts, of course. Information is, I believe, a lot of information is coming our way.
mm,
So we need to have a leader who is able to filter the information, who
mm,
knows what to take, when to stop taking, when is it enough to start taking a decision. Otherwise, there's no end to it.
mm,
So having that skill is important. Having the skill of focus, because attention span is getting less and less.
mm,
And being able to focus is really critical to getting work done.
mm,
And also getting work done from the team, because if we are not focused, our team's not going to be very focused either.
mm,
So we need to be highly focused. And then I think the evergreen skill of communication,
mm,
which has been important all through time, and I think it's going to remain important. Being able to communicate and express yourself and understand what others are saying, listening to them properly. I
mm,
think that's a very important skill as well.
mm. Amazing. Thank you. Great response. So moving on, Sandeep, let's talk a little bit more about people. Um, and human beings have all their own sets of challenges. What are some strategies you recommend for overcoming self-doubt and building confidence?
Nice question. There are actually quite a few things that one can do. And
Mm,
again, from person to person, there can be some variation, but generally speaking. So self-doubt is really a fear of failure.
mm,
So the first thing is to affect the mindset around failure.
mhm,
What is failure? So think of it like this. We walk into a garden expecting that it's going to be full of roses.
mm,
And when we reach there, we find that there are no roses there.
mm,
But there are a lot of other flowers, colorful, with good fragrance. Is it a failure? Right? So an expectation that we've created for ourselves, when we don't meet it, then it's considered a failure
right.
by us. So that fear is there, and we're trying to impact the mindset that there is no such thing as failure.
Mm,
It's only learning. Failure, whatever we consider as failure, is actually making us stronger. We are gaining more experience. We're
right.
learning new things. We're trying to find new pathways. I mean, there can be no success really without having this failure in quotes. So that is the first thing, the mindset change.
Mm,
The second thing is to get the client, to look back into their life,
mm,
the history of their life. They're senior leaders. How did they reach there? There's no way that they could have reached that position without having their own ups and downs in life.
correct.
So how did they overcome those downs? What
Mm,
happened there?
mm,
And if they could do that then, what stops them from doing that now?
mm,
Right? So it's about getting them to regain that confidence into who they are really. They're forgetting their past. Then it's also about our minds, how our mind works.
Right.
Because our mind works in the prehistoric way of a survival mode. It tends to underrate ourselves and overrate the others. And that's an aspect to be brought forward as well.
Right.
Right. But leaving all this aside, talking about actual steps would be to take baby steps. So, for instance, if we had the self-doubt regarding a public speech that's coming up, then the baby steps would be, have a smaller audience, your family, your company, your team members, your colleagues, and gradually keep expanding that and expose yourselves to bigger and bigger audiences. So that way you gain a little more confidence before that actual date, for the speech. What else? One thing that could really work well is, it doesn't happen often. If the person can find someone else to coach with a similar problem, but a junior person.
Right.
So for instance, if let's say I've been promoted recently and I start having self-doubt as to, can I really deliver? If I can get hold of somebody who is a junior, who is also in a similar position of promotion and having self-doubt, and I had the opportunity to coach that person, as I coach that person, I'll end up coaching myself.
Right. Very interesting.
These are just some of the things we can use.
No, very well said. And what would be some tools or techniques you use to help your clients handle a lot of their mental and emotional state, which is also a function of your own self-doubt or confidence or fear of failure?
Yeah. Tools. Okay. So one thing that comes to mind is actually a Tony Robbins tool. He calls it a triad. So it has the 3 factors of physiology, focus, and language. So how when we are emotionally down or we are a mental wreck, our body just tends down, we hang our head. The body language shows what is happening in our minds. So this is actually a two-way street. It's not just the mind affecting the body. The body can equally affect the mind.
Right.
So if we just, improve our posture, just smile, even if you don't feel like it, just smile. By the way, that's the background for laughter yoga, if you've heard of it. Where people just laugh for the sake of laughing. But all these things are, the psychology there is that the physiology change is affecting the mind.
Correct.
So that's physiology. The second one he has was focus. So focus is about, what are we really focusing on? If we focus on the negative, then it pulls us down. It makes our emotional state worse. If we focus on the positive, then it improves our emotional state.
Very interesting.
So we spoke about failure, So if we just look at failure, if a person is looking at failure as a negative thing, that's going to pull that person down. Emotionally, it's going to get worse and worse. But if that same event is looked upon as an experience, as a learning, as a positive thing, it's going to lift that person up. Right? So that's focus. And the third was language. So language is actually very interesting and very subtle. So language, I think one example would be the word try. So often we use the word try is, I'm going to try and get onto this diet and reduce weight. The moment we use that word try, we are actually giving permission to our mind to not do the very best. And so the language we use in framing our thoughts, in talking to ourselves, makes a difference to our emotional state as well.
Well said. One more question, then I have a few questions for you personally. What advice do you have for professionals who feel they're stuck in the pursuit of higher titles and salaries?
That is interesting. So when you say stuck in the pursuit of high titles, it could mean two things. It could mean that they are habituated to pursue high titles and they're kind of stuck in that. They want to get away from that. Or it could mean that they are trying to, get promoted, get those titles, but they are stuck. Right. So I'll address the second one.
Okay.
That's the more common one.
Yeah.
So what needs to happen first is we need to get away from a victim mindset, a blame culture.
Right.
So stop blaming other people, other circumstances. Stop thinking of yourself as a victim. That's the very first thing. The second thing would be to get feedback. Feedback from your colleagues, from your managers, especially the one that's responsible for pulling you up or promoting you. Get a feedback. What is it that's stopping you? What are they looking for? What are you missing? So understand that from a feedback perspective. Then you need to have, develop your skills. So you have to look at what are the skills that are necessary in the role you want to get to. You might be very proficient or in where you are, but where you need to get to might require a different set of skills. Right. So what you need to do, as an example, so being in charge of just the finance division, like in just being a financial accountant, that kind of a thing, you're looking after your section. That's your part. But when you start going to the C-suite, you're looking after the entire organization. So the thought process is completely different. So what are those skills that are required? And especially the soft skills, because the higher you go, the more you need these soft skills. Yeah, that's what comes to mind straight away.
Fair enough. So now let me move to 2 or 3 more questions for you personally.
Sure.
Given your own background of a high pressure role as a CFO, and now you stepping them back and achieving your success based on the success of others as a coach, how do you reconcile the paradoxes of high achievement and personal fulfillment in your coaching?
I don't consider that as a paradox. So I look at fulfillment in life. Life has many aspects. And assuming that high achievement is talking about career, that's just one part of life. Right? But there's so many other parts, health, wealth, relationships, in terms of maybe religious, spirituality, God knows, so many other parts. So what are these different parts? And what is the ideal situation for each person is different. Where do we want to be? And I guess that's what it was for me. It was so much focused on the career path that it became into high achievement there. But then when I moved into understanding these other dimensions, then it was, well, pursuing this path is not going to give me a fulfillment or satisfaction. So there's no paradox per se. I'm still a high achiever, just in different segments in different areas.
Got it. Well said. And given your own background, how has your background supported your own coaching philosophy? And you did talk about 3 of your core philosophies, but how has it supported your coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
Okay, so my background is essentially that of a corporate employee.
Correct.
So I've always had teams, and I've always tried to look at the potential of teams, like I mentioned earlier. So that is one. I tend to look at the potential. So when a client comes to me, I tend to look at the potential that exists there.
Right.
The second part is, when possible, time meant it was not always possible, but when possible, I would encourage the team member to answer their own questions, to investigate their own problems, rather than just provide a solution.
Okay.
And that served me well in coaching, because in coaching, we don't provide solutions.
Correct.
Right? So we just guide. We just open the mindsets to other aspects. So that's all it is. So that has helped me in doing this.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have time for two more questions for you, Sandeep.
Sure.
My next question is, how have you been shaped by people in your life? And how are they influencing you as a coach today?
People in my life is essentially my family. And there's a saying in Hindi, "Ghar ki murgi dal barabar." So for our English speaking audience, it's close to familiarity breeds contempt. So I think when it comes to dealing with the family, I keep my coaching hat aside and just deal with them in the normal way and as best as I can. I tried a few times to try and use coaching, and I found that that's not working.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I have to drop that. Yeah.
Fair enough. And my last question to you, if you could go back and give your own younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, without doubt, take a coach as soon as you can, for as long as you can.
Okay. And on that note, Sandeep, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your journey. Thank you for talking to me about so many different aspects of coaching. I loved your three core philosophies, which is get out of the comfort zone, build self-awareness, and develop new habits. We covered a lot of talk. The discussion was around strategies for building self-confidence, doubt, handling failure. But thank you again for the time you gave to me and my viewers and listeners. All the very best to you.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.